Dr. Kalira Vorn looked down at the laboratory table with her usual mixture of curiosity and impatience. The room was sterile, lit by pale white lights that reflected off the polished metal surfaces of every instrument and device. She moved like a predator among her prey, her elongated fingers delicately touching control panels, her eyes scanning every holographic display as though it were a map of some alien battlefield. She had traveled across half the galaxy to arrive at this human facility on Earth, a planet that fascinated her as much as it annoyed her. Humans were messy, unpredictable, illogical, yet they had one quality that drew her scientific curiosity like no other: their complete inability to suppress pain. Pain, she had always believed, was a weakness. Her species, the Vithari, had evolved past it. From the moment of birth, their bodies and minds were shielded from the sensation of pain. Emotional or physical, it did not matter. They simply did not feel it in the way other beings did. And yet here she was in a world full of beings who suffered constantly, who stumbled, fell, and still survived. She turned sharply when a soft voice called from the doorway. "Dr. Vorn?" Ethan Cole stepped into the room, carrying a small stack of data tablets. He was human. That much was immediately clear. His movements were careful, almost hesitant, but there was a quiet confidence in the way he held himself. His brown hair was slightly tousled, and his blue eyes reflected both curiosity and mild skepticism. He was young, perhaps too young to fully understand the reputation of the alien scientist he had been assigned to assist. "Ah, the human," Kalira said, her voice smooth, precise, lacking any warmth. "Finally, I was beginning to wonder if you were capable of punctuality." Ethan smirked, placing the tablets on the table. "I operate on Earth time, not Vithari time," he said. There was a subtle humor in his tone, one that Kalira did not immediately recognize. She tilted her head, observing him closely. Humans thought themselves clever, but Kalira had long ago learned that their cleverness often masked simple foolishness. "I will need your assistance in calibrating the neural interface modules," she said, gesturing to a set of gleaming devices arranged like surgical instruments. "These are highly sensitive. Any error could skew the data on pain response or worse." Her voice trailed off as she scanned the laboratory, letting the implied danger hang in the air. "You understand the consequences of negligence, yes?" Ethan nodded, though his expression betrayed a flicker of amusement. "I think I can handle it. Worst case, I get a shock. Not my first time with a high-voltage experiment." Kalira raised an eyebrow. Shock was irrelevant to a human. Interesting. She had spent decades studying humans, reading every paper, every record on their biology, their evolution, their limits. She had watched humans in simulations, in combat, and in laboratory settings. She had expected fragility. What she did not expect was their stubbornness, their persistence, and their inexplicable tolerance for pain. "Very well," she said, moving toward the nearest module. "Follow my instructions exactly. We cannot afford error." She began to demonstrate the procedure, her movements precise and almost hypnotic, as though each step were a form of dance. Ethan followed, matching her motions as best he could. Hours passed. The room hummed with energy as devices whirred, and holographic readouts blinked in rapid succession. Kalira was methodical, her focus absolute, while Ethan moved with a natural curiosity that often led to small mistakes. Yet each time he erred, he laughed softly, shaking his head as if to apologize. The sound struck Kalira oddly. Humans laughed at mistakes. Vithari did not. Mistakes were corrected silently, without display. "You are laughing?" she asked suddenly, pausing mid-motion. Ethan looked up, a wry grin on his face. "Yeah, it's how we deal with pain, discomfort. Mistakes." He lifted his hand, showing a small burn on his forearm from a misplaced tool. "See, hurt a little. Won't kill me." Kalira stared at him, her mind racing. "Hurt a little? Won't kill me?" She had never heard such a thing. Her species felt nothing of this sort. A physical injury would be noted, repaired, and forgotten. Emotional pain was irrelevant. The human, by contrast, seemed to transform pain into something almost usable, something that shaped him, fascinating. "Your species is curious," she said slowly. "Why do you allow yourselves to feel? Why do you not suppress it?" Ethan shrugged, still grinning despite the burn. "Suppression? That's boring. Pain tells you you're alive. It tells you to be careful, to learn, to survive." "You wouldn't understand," Kalira blinked. She did understand. She understood the biology, the neural pathways, the chemical signals, but she did not understand the emotional response, the connection between physical sensation and choice, between suffering and growth. Ethan was alive in a way she had never been. The realization made her uneasy, though she refused to show it. As the day progressed, Kalira decided to push the limits of their experiment. She had designed a series of simulations that tested neural response to controlled pain stimuli. It was entirely safe, but she wanted to see how Ethan's human nervous system reacted under real stress. Ethan consented, though not without his usual humor. "I trust you," he said, "mostly because I have no choice." The first simulation was mild. Small electrical pulses on a feedback pad attached to his arm. Ethan winced but continued, his face calm. Kalira's instruments recorded every micro-reaction, nerve-firing patterns, adrenaline spikes, subtle shifts in expression. Her interest grew. She had expected humans to break, to panic, to collapse. Yet Ethan endured almost deliberately, even teasing her when she appeared frustrated by his composure. "Your reactions are unpredictable," she muttered almost to herself. "Pain is supposed to limit behavior, force adaptation. You transform it into action." Ethan laughed softly. "Exactly. Pain doesn't stop us. It tells us where we need to be stronger. I guess that's why your people look at us like we're fragile." Kalira considered this. Her species considered them superior because they had removed vulnerability. Humans, by contrast, retained vulnerability and thrived anyway. There was a lesson here, a paradox that her analytical mind could not resolve. Hours blurred into night. The laboratory lights dimmed slightly, leaving a quiet hum of machinery. Kalira and Ethan continued the experiments, but conversation gradually replaced procedure. They spoke of Earth, of Vethar, of evolution and survival. Ethan shared stories of human ingenuity, of wars fought with bravery against impossible odds, of explorers charting the stars despite constant danger. Kalira listened, skeptical at first, but slowly intrigued. "Your species is reckless," she observed. "You risk yourselves constantly, yet you survive." Ethan shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Survival isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about learning from it. You can't have growth without struggle. You can't have life without risk." Kalira frowned, her fingers tapping on the table. Growth, struggle, risk. Words that had no real meaning for her kind. For the first time, she felt something strange stirring inside. A kind of irritation. A sense of imbalance. She could not name it. Her body, always predictable and controlled, seemed to hum with an energy that was foreign. She dismissed the thought, focusing on the data before her. Yet every time Ethan laughed at a minor setback, every time he winced but continued, she felt it again. A tiny, unexplainable prick of curiosity, something beyond logic, something human. By the time the night deepened, Kalira realized she had underestimated the human. Not just his physical endurance, but his mental resilience. While she had assumed pain was a weakness, Ethan demonstrated it was a tool, a guide, a teacher. And slowly, almost reluctantly, she began to see why her species had never truly evolved beyond strength. Humans had something her kind lacked, a connection to their own vulnerability, and it made them unpredictable. The night ended with the machines powered down, the lab silent except for the soft hum of ventilation. Ethan stretched and yawned, rubbing his sore arm. Kalira watched him, a quiet tension in her posture. She had come to this planet expecting to study humans, to catalog their limitations, to prove their inferiority. Yet, in a single day, she had begun to question everything she believed. "Rest now," she said abruptly. "Tomorrow we continue." Ethan nodded, offering a faint smile. "Sure thing. Don't stay up too late or you'll turn into one of us, weak, tired, and full of whatever it is you humans call energy." Kalira turned away, hiding her own thoughts. Weak? She did not feel weak. And yet, as she powered down the lab, she could not deny the lingering curiosity. The subtle pull of something unfamiliar. Something human. She had expected to teach, to observe, to dominate. Instead, she felt challenged. And in that challenge lay the seed of a question she had never asked herself before. Could it be possible that humans, in all their fragile imperfection, were stronger than the Vethari in ways she had never imagined? For the first time in her life, Kalira did not have an answer. But she knew one thing: she wanted to find out. The morning sun filtered through the laboratory windows, painting the room with a soft, pale light. Kalira Vorn arrived early, her steps echoing on the metallic floor. She moved with purpose, her mind already occupied with the events of the previous day. Ethan Cole would be arriving soon, and the experiments would continue. But this time, Kalira had something new in mind. She had spent the night reviewing the data collected from the preliminary tests. Every neural spike, every micro-expression, every adrenaline reaction had been carefully logged. And yet, the more she analyzed it, the more she realized that her initial assumptions about humans were incomplete. Humans did not merely endure pain. They integrated it, used it, and somehow thrived because of it. Her analytical mind struggled to reconcile this fact with everything she had learned about her own species. When Ethan arrived, carrying a small bag of tools and a mug of earth coffee, he greeted her with a casual smile. "Morning, Dr. Vorn, ready for round 2? Kalira's eyes narrowed slightly. "Round 2 is not a game," she said. "It is critical research. Your cooperation will be required at all times without deviation." Ethan chuckled lightly, setting his bag down. "Got it, no deviations. Just science and coffee, then." They began the day with recalibration of the neural interface modules. Kalira's long fingers adjusted settings with precision, while Ethan assisted, observing every change with quiet fascination. Despite his human limitations, he had a sharp mind and a natural ability to understand complex systems. Kalira found this useful, though she would never admit it aloud. Once the equipment was prepared, Kalira initiated the next phase of the experiment. This time, the tests involved a combination of physical stimuli and controlled neural feedback designed to simulate minor injuries and environmental stressors. The goal was to measure not only the human response but also the cognitive processing that accompanied the sensation of pain. Ethan sat calmly as the first simulation began. Small pulses of energy traced through the neural interface, causing subtle discomfort in his limbs. Unlike the Vithari, who would not even register such sensations, Ethan winced slightly, then adjusted his posture and continued. Kalira observed, taking meticulous notes. "You are remarkably composed," she commented. "I expected greater signs of distress." Ethan shrugged. "Pain's part of life. It tells you when to stop, when to adjust. I don't see the point in panicking over it." Kalira tilted her head. The human's words were simple, yet they carried a depth she could not quantify. For the first time, she considered that humans might possess a form of strength entirely absent in her species. Physical resilience was one thing. Emotional resilience was another. And humans seemed to combine both, using pain as a guide rather than a limitation. As the day progressed, Kalira introduced more complex stimuli. Simulated environmental hazards, minor shocks, and controlled stressors challenged Ethan's nervous system. Each time he responded with subtle adjustments, maintaining balance and composure. Occasionally he made a lighthearted comment or a small joke, even when the discomfort increased. Kalira observed this behavior closely. She had expected a breakdown, a panic, or at least an instinctive withdrawal. Instead, Ethan demonstrated adaptability. He integrated the pain into his actions, maintaining control even under simulated stress. It was a process she had never witnessed in any other species. "Why do you endure this?" she asked during a brief pause. "Why do you not attempt to block it entirely?" Ethan looked thoughtful. "Because blocking it doesn't teach you anything. Feeling pain lets you know what to avoid, what to improve, and what matters. Without it, you're blind." Kalira considered his answer carefully. Blind. Her species had evolved past pain, yes, but had they lost something essential in the process? Humans, despite their vulnerability, demonstrated insight that she could not replicate. Each instance of discomfort strengthened them, not weakened them. By mid-afternoon, Kalira decided to push the experiment further. She introduced a simulation designed to mimic environmental hazards combined with minor neural feedback that triggered a sensation akin to burning or impact. Ethan's body reacted naturally, flinching and adjusting, yet he continued to follow instructions without hesitation. Kalira watched as his expression shifted subtly. There was discomfort, yes, but also determination. The human mind seemed to process pain not as a signal to stop but as a signal to act, to survive, and to adapt. This was a concept she had never fully understood, and the more she observed, the more fascinated she became. During a break, Kalira studied the data displays while Ethan cleaned the equipment. She noticed something unusual, a pattern in his neural responses that suggested not only awareness of pain but anticipation of it. The human brain appeared to predict and prepare for discomfort before it occurred. This preemptive adjustment enhanced his resilience and efficiency. "You anticipate the stimuli," she said, pointing to the holographic display. "Your nervous system is compensating before the pain even occurs." Ethan looked over, nodding. "Yeah, kind of. We do it instinctively. It's survival. You feel a threat, your body adjusts. You feel pain, you learn. You repeat. That's how humans stay alive." Kalira's mind raced. This concept was revolutionary. Her entire species had evolved to eliminate pain entirely, believing it superior. Yet here was a human demonstrating a form of intelligence, resilience, and adaptability derived entirely from the very weakness the Vithari had rejected. The day moved into evening, and the lab grew quiet. Kalira found herself increasingly aware of Ethan's presence, not in a personal sense, but as a source of observation. His reactions, his humor, his determination, each instance was a puzzle piece she could not ignore. For the first time, she considered that humans might teach her something beyond her initial research objectives. Ethan noticed her scrutiny and offered a small grin. "You keep staring at me like I'm a specimen," he said lightly. "Don't worry. I'm not fragile. Promise." Kalira ignored the comment but continued to monitor his neural responses. The more she observed, the more anomalies she detected. Certain reactions, subtle changes in blood flow, and slight shifts in expression suggested emotional processing she had never witnessed. The human's ability to experience discomfort, integrate it, and act purposefully was creating patterns in her data that defied Vithari expectations. As night settled outside the lab, Kalira initiated the final test of the day. This simulation combined multiple environmental stressors with neural feedback, pushing Ethan's endurance while keeping him safe. She watched as he navigated the challenges, adjusting continuously, demonstrating a balance of caution and courage. At one point, a simulated hazard caused a sharp spike in discomfort, and Ethan instinctively flinched, nearly losing his balance. Kalira noted the exact moment, fascinated by his instinctive response. He recovered immediately, continuing the task with precision. "You are remarkable," she admitted quietly, almost to herself. "Your species has capabilities I did not anticipate." Ethan glanced at her, eyebrow raised. "Capabilities, huh? You mean like stubbornness?" Kalira's lips twitched slightly, though she quickly suppressed any hint of amusement. "Stubbornness is one way to describe it," she said. "It is more than that. You endure, adapt, and integrate. You transform weakness into strength. It is inefficient yet effective." Ethan laughed softly. "I'll take that as a compliment. Humans are good at surviving. Always have been." Kalira returned to her observations. She realized that this day had been more than a series of experiments. It had been a revelation. Humans, with all their vulnerability and emotional capacity, possessed a form of resilience that the Vithari could not comprehend. Pain, which her species had eliminated, was not merely a liability. For humans, it was a guide, a teacher, and a motivator. When the lab finally powered down for the night, Kalira sat back, her thoughts racing. She had begun this journey expecting to teach, to study, and to catalog the limits of a fragile species. Instead, she had been confronted with a truth she could not ignore. Humans were strong in ways that defied conventional logic. Ethan prepared to leave, stretching his arms and rubbing his sore shoulders. "See you tomorrow, Dr. Vorn. Ready to push the limits again?" Kalira nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. "Yes," she said, her voice precise but carrying an uncharacteristic note of anticipation. "We will continue." As Ethan departed, Kalira remained in the lab reviewing the data one last time. She noticed a recurring pattern in his neural responses, a subtle resonance that suggested not only awareness of pain, but an ability to anticipate and integrate it. It was a form of intelligence derived entirely from vulnerability. She considered what this meant. Her species had pursued perfection through the elimination of weakness. Humans had embraced their weakness and transformed it into strength. There was a lesson here, one that went beyond science, beyond data, and beyond survival. For the first time, Kalira felt a flicker of something unfamiliar in her chest, a sense of anticipation, curiosity, and perhaps even admiration. Humans were not merely subjects of study. They were teachers in their own right. And as the night deepened and the laboratory lights dimmed, Kalira realized that tomorrow's experiments would be more than tests of endurance. They would be a journey into understanding something far greater than neural responses or simulated pain. The night had fallen fully over the human research facility, leaving the laboratory bathed in the soft glow of operational screens and the low hum of machinery. Kalira Vorn remained inside, her mind restless, reviewing the day's data and simulations. She was alone, or so she thought. Ethan had left hours ago, citing the human need for sleep, a concept Kalira found intriguing but inefficient. Her fingers moved over the control panels with precision, adjusting parameters and monitoring neural activity. The lab was quiet, almost serene, yet beneath that calm lay a subtle tension. Kalira's thoughts kept returning to the human, Ethan Cole. His resilience, his integration of pain into action, had left an imprint in her mind. She could not deny that his behavior challenged her entire understanding of life and survival. Without warning, a sharp alarm blared through the laboratory. Kalira's head snapped up. Lights flashed red and an automated voice called out, "Containment breach detected. Neural interface module malfunction. Immediate attention required." Her pulse accelerated, or at least she believed it would have if she were capable of such sensations. Swiftly, she moved to the source of the alert. One of the neural interface modules had experienced an unexpected feedback surge. Sparks flickered along the surface of the equipment and the containment field shimmered unnaturally. Kalira's mind raced. This type of malfunction was rare, almost impossible. The protocols were designed to prevent it. Yet here it was, a live situation demanding immediate action. She activated the emergency stabilizers, her fingers moving with practiced precision. The hum of energy shifted, and the sparks dimmed slightly, but the module was still unstable. She reached for the manual override controls, when a sudden pulse of energy shot from the module, striking her shoulder. Kalira staggered back, her body trembling in a way she had never experienced before. A strange, sharp sensation radiated through her neural pathways, unlike anything she had ever known. Her eyes widened. Something was wrong. She had been trained, equipped, and genetically engineered to withstand environmental hazards and neural fluctuations. She had never felt pain, and yet now it was undeniable. A burning, searing sensation coursed through her body, sharp and immediate. Kalira's hands flew to the module, desperately trying to shut it down. Sparks flew again, and the machinery groaned under the strain. She felt the burn intensify in her arm, spreading along her torso. For the first time in her life, she screamed, not aloud, for the sound itself seemed inadequate, but in sheer awareness of sensation. The laboratory lights flickered, casting long shadows across the metallic surfaces. Kalira's vision blurred, and she struggled to maintain control. Her body, accustomed to perfect equilibrium, now rebelled. Every movement caused more pain, more awareness of vulnerability. Then a human voice called out, "Dr. Vorn, step back." Ethan appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. He assessed the sparks, the unstable module, and Kalira's trembling form, and without hesitation he ran forward. "Hold on!" he shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her back just as another pulse of energy shot from the module. Kalira gasped, feeling an intensity she could not describe. She had never known weakness, had never felt helpless, and yet here she was, entirely at the mercy of circumstances beyond her control. Her mind raced through procedural responses, trying to suppress the awareness, to deny it. But it was impossible. The sensation was too real, too immediate. Ethan worked quickly, adjusting the containment fields and stabilizing the module. Sparks flew around him, yet he moved calmly, efficiently. He shielded Kalira from further exposure, his hands steady despite the danger. Her vision cleared slightly as he guided her to a safe distance. You're alive?" Kalira finally managed to say, her voice strained, trembling from the sensation she had no words for. Ethan looked at her, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. "You're hurt," he said simply. "And it's okay." "You'll be fine. Just stay with me." Kalira stared at him, baffled. She had faced environmental hazards, neural overloads, and even simulated combat situations without flinching. Yet the raw awareness of her own vulnerability, combined with the human's presence, created an experience she could not categorize. Her neural systems, previously immune to such feedback, now screamed in protest. As Ethan worked to stabilize her, Kalira noticed something strange. Despite the pain, there was clarity. Her mind, sharpened by centuries of scientific discipline, analyzed every reaction, every pulse, every tremor. She saw patterns she had never observed in her own species, in the human data she had collected. Humans endured, adapted, and integrated pain into action. The same principle now applied to her body, though she did not yet understand it. "You feel it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "This sensation?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, pain, it's part of life. Helps you know what's real, what matters, and what you need to survive. Don't fight it. Let it guide you." Kalira considered his words. Let it guide you. Her species had always fought to eliminate pain, to rise above it, to control every sensation. Yet now, in this moment of involuntary exposure, she realized the truth in his statement. Pain was not merely a weakness, it was information, awareness, a form of understanding. The hours stretched on as Ethan assisted her in recovering from the neural feedback surge. He applied medical protocols, stabilized her neural signals, and monitored her vital signs. Kalira followed his instructions, learning through experience what her species had never allowed. The sharp, burning awareness persisted, but she began to notice patterns. Certain movements caused more sensation, others less. She began to anticipate the feedback, adjusting instinctively. For the first time, Kalira understood the human approach. Pain was not something to suppress entirely. It was something to study, to interpret, to use. Ethan's guidance demonstrated that even extreme discomfort could become a tool for adaptation and learning. By the time the emergency subsided, Kalira was exhausted but awake. Her body still throbbed with unfamiliar sensation, yet her mind was alert, racing with understanding. She looked at Ethan, who sat nearby, equally tired but unshaken. "You were calm," she said, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "How can you remain so composed in the presence of danger?" Ethan shrugged, rubbing the back of his neck. "Humans, we get used to it. We learn to integrate it. Pain isn't a stop sign, it's a signal. You react, adjust, survive. That's what matters." Kalira absorbed his words, her analytical mind processing the implications. Her entire worldview, shaped by centuries of Vithari evolution, was being challenged by a single human. She had come to study humans, expecting to catalog their limits and prove their inferiority. Instead, she had witnessed strength in a form she had never known, strength derived from vulnerability, from awareness of pain, from the conscious integration of experience into action. As she sat in the quiet aftermath, Kalira realized something profound. Pain for humans was not a liability. It was a teacher, a guide, a companion in the journey of survival. And she had experienced it herself, felt it in her own body, raw and undeniable, yet illuminating in ways that logic alone could never achieve. Ethan looked at her, a faint smile on his face. "See? Not so bad once you get used to it, right?" Kalira stared at him, struggling to reconcile her previous understanding with the reality she had just faced. "This sensation, it is enlightening," she admitted quietly. "I had believed that the elimination of pain was the pinnacle of evolution. I was wrong." Ethan chuckled softly. "Glad to help with your research, then." The night drew on and the laboratory lights dimmed to a soft glow. Kalira remained seated, reflecting on the experience. She had come to Earth expecting to study, to teach, to dominate. Instead, she had learned something profound about strength, resilience, and the human capacity to endure. For the first time, Kalira felt a connection to the human experience, a resonance with vulnerability that her species had long abandoned. She realized that this understanding could change everything: her research, her worldview, and perhaps even the way the Vithari approached life itself. And as she sat there, recovering from the neural feedback surge, Kalira knew one thing with certainty: the experiments would continue. But from this moment onward, they would be different. They would not merely measure pain and response. They would explore its meaning, its purpose, and its power. Ethan, watching her from across the room, understood the shift. The human and the alien, once teacher and subject, were now partners in discovery, each learning from the other in ways neither could have anticipated. Kalira's mind raced with possibilities. She could never unfeel what she had experienced. She could never unlearn the lesson that pain was not weakness. And she could never ignore the realization that humans, in their imperfection and vulnerability, possessed a strength that even the most advanced species could not replicate. The night deepened and the laboratory grew silent. Kalyra and Ethan remained, two beings from different worlds bound by curiosity, circumstance, and the shared experience of discovery. For Kalyra, the journey had just begun. For Ethan, it was another day in a life defined by resilience, and together, they would push the boundaries of understanding, challenging assumptions, and exploring truths that stretched far beyond the limits of either species. The next morning, the laboratory was quiet in a way that felt different from before. Kalyra Vorn moved through the room with a measured pace, her mind still replaying the events of the previous night. The experience with the neural feedback surge lingered, leaving impressions she could not fully analyze. Her body, once immune to pain, now carried a faint ache that reminded her constantly of the human truth she had experienced. Pain, it seemed, could no longer be ignored, suppressed, or dismissed. Ethan Cole arrived shortly after sunrise, as punctual as ever, carrying his usual cup of coffee and a small satchel of tools. He observed Kalyra carefully as she adjusted the lab's equipment. There was a subtle awareness in his posture, as if he understood the residual strain she was experiencing. Kalyra, though, was too absorbed in her thoughts to notice immediately. "Good morning," Ethan said, setting his bag down. "How are you feeling?" Kalyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I am functioning within normal parameters," she replied. Her words were precise, yet there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice she did not intend. Though the experience was enlightening. Ethan raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Enlightening, huh? That's one way to describe being zapped by a malfunctioning device." Kalyra ignored the levity and moved to the nearest module. "We must continue," she said. "The experiment cannot pause for discomfort." Ethan nodded, though he noted the careful way she handled her movements. The slight hesitation, the controlled adjustments of her body. These were traces of an awareness she had never possessed before. The human had become an unintentional teacher, demonstrating that pain could be managed, understood, and even integrated into action. The day's experiments were different from before. Kalyra had altered the neural interface to simulate controlled pain stimuli without endangering the subject. Her goal was to observe not only physical reactions but also cognitive adaptation, and to see whether her own species could understand the value of sensation. Ethan followed the protocols without complaint, enduring mild pulses and environmental simulations. He adjusted instinctively, maintaining balance, coordination, and composure. Each reaction was measured, each movement precise, yet accompanied by subtle expressions, wincing, flinching, or a brief exhale, that demonstrated awareness of the discomfort. Kalyra recorded every detail, her analytical mind racing. Humans did not merely react to pain. They processed it, interpreted it, and integrated it into strategy. They were aware of vulnerability, yet chose to act despite it. This combination of insight and courage fascinated her more than any data set she had ever analyzed. During a short break, Kalyra studied the holographic displays, noticing patterns that were entirely foreign to her. The human nervous system appeared to anticipate discomfort, preparing responses before the stimuli even occurred. This preemptive adjustment enhanced resilience and efficiency, allowing for continued action under conditions that would incapacitate most other species. "You anticipate the stimuli before they happen," she said, addressing Ethan directly. "Your neural patterns suggest preparation rather than reaction. How do you achieve this?" Ethan shrugged casually, though his eyes reflected thoughtfulness, instinct, experience, and a bit of training. Humans survive by learning to expect the unexpected. We use pain as a signal, not a punishment. It tells us what to avoid and how to adapt. Kalyra's mind churned. Her species had evolved to eliminate pain entirely, believing it superior. Yet here was a human who turned vulnerability into strength. She realized that she had underestimated the depth of human capability. The very sensation she had once dismissed as weakness now revealed insight, resilience, and adaptability. As the afternoon progressed, Kalyra initiated a more complex simulation. This one combined multiple environmental stressors with subtle neural feedback. Ethan navigated the challenge with precision, adjusting to each stimulus while maintaining focus and composure. His body moved instinctively, guided by both awareness and anticipation. Kalyra observed, noting how he integrated each sensation into decision-making. A slight burn on his arm caused him to shift position, avoiding further exposure. A simulated impact prompted immediate compensation in posture and balance. His responses were rapid, coordinated, and effective, yet he did not retreat or falter. "This is remarkable," she admitted almost to herself. "You endure discomfort and still function optimally. Pain is not a limitation but a guide." Ethan glanced at her. "Exactly. Pain teaches. It doesn't control us unless we let it. You can't grow without it." Kalyra considered the statement deeply. For the first time, she felt the truth of it in her own body. The residual aches from the previous night were no longer just sensations. They were information, guiding her movements, influencing her awareness, and reshaping her understanding. By evening, Kalyra decided to test the limits of observation rather than direct stimulation. She instructed Ethan to perform complex tasks under mild simulated discomfort while she recorded neural and physiological responses. The human moved efficiently, integrating each sensation into action. At one point, he stumbled slightly, wincing, yet corrected himself almost immediately. Kalyra realized that the flinch, the wincing, the brief exhalation, these were not weaknesses, but adaptations. Humans did not deny their vulnerability. They acknowledged it, processed it, and acted in harmony with it. The contrast to her species could not have been more stark. The Vithari had eliminated pain, but in doing so they had also eliminated opportunity for certain forms of insight and awareness. As night approached, the laboratory grew quiet. Kalyra sat back, reviewing the day's data. She could no longer approach the experiments with the detached objectivity she had maintained before. The neural feedback, the human resilience, and the subtle emotional responses had begun to influence her own perceptions. Pain was no longer an abstract concept. It was tangible, immediate, and transformative. Ethan, noticing her contemplative silence, spoke softly. "You're thinking about what we did today, aren't you?" Kalyra nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Yes, it is. Different from my expectations. I had believed pain was a limitation. I see now that it can be instructive, even empowering." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's the thing about humans. We're fragile, sure, but we use it. Every experience, every discomfort, every challenge becomes part of how we survive. You felt that last night, didn't you?" Kalyra hesitated, then nodded. The memory of the neural feedback surge and the searing awareness it caused was still vivid. She recalled the helplessness, the trembling, the fear, but also the clarity, the understanding, and the unprecedented insight. For the first time, she truly grasped the human perspective on pain. "You guided me," Kalyra said quietly, almost reluctantly. "Your presence, your assistance, it allowed me to endure, to comprehend." Ethan nodded. "That's what humans do. We help each other. Pain isn't something we face alone. We share it, learn from it, and support each other through it." Kalyra considered the statement carefully. Her species operated on logic, precision, and efficiency. Vithari did not rely on connection, on empathy, or on shared experience. Yet here, with a single human, she was learning the profound strength that could come from vulnerability and companionship. The night continued, and Kalyra found herself reflecting on more than just the experiments. She thought about the human capacity for courage, for persistence, and for transformation. Pain, which had always been an abstract concept to her, was now a teacher, revealing truths about endurance, choice, and resilience. Ethan observed her quietly, recognizing the shift in her demeanor. The alien scientist, so disciplined and detached, was now engaged in a process of understanding that transcended data and protocol. She was learning in real time what it meant to confront vulnerability and integrate it into action. Hours passed, and the laboratory lights dimmed to a soft glow. Kalyra continued her review, recording observations and noting patterns she had never seen. The human mind, in its imperfection and susceptibility, had revealed a strength her species had long dismissed. It was a lesson in resilience, awareness, and the transformative power of pain. By the end of the night, Kalyra realized that her perception of humans had changed fundamentally. They were not weak, fragile, or inferior. They were adaptive, resilient, and capable of turning vulnerability into strength. She had experienced it herself, and she had witnessed it in Ethan Cole. As she powered down the laboratory for the night, Kalyra felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. The experiments would continue, but the purpose had shifted. It was no longer merely about observing human responses. It was about understanding the essence of life, the value of pain, and the strength derived from experience. Ethan, packing his tools, offered a final comment before leaving. "See you tomorrow, Dr. Vorn, ready to learn more?" Kalira nodded, a faint acknowledgement of the journey ahead. "Yes," she said. "We will continue. And this time, I will observe with a different perspective." As she sat in the quiet laboratory, Kalira allowed herself a moment of reflection. The human had changed the parameters of her understanding, and she had begun to change along with them. Pain, once dismissed as irrelevant, had become a teacher. Vulnerability, once seen as weakness, had revealed strength. And the presence of The laboratory was quiet in the early morning hours. Kalira Vorn arrived before sunrise, her thoughts consumed with the previous days of research and discovery. The lingering effects of the neural feedback surge still pulsed faintly through her body, a constant reminder of the sensation she had once believed impossible. Pain, she realized, was not simply a weakness, it was information, guidance, and in its own strange way, a form of empowerment. Ethan Cole arrived soon after, carrying his usual satchel and a travel mug of coffee. He looked at Kalira with quiet curiosity, noticing her attentive, almost contemplative demeanor. She moved differently now, more aware of her own body, more considerate of subtle sensations that she had once dismissed. "Morning," Ethan said casually, though his tone carried a hint of observation. "Feeling ready for another day?" Kalira paused, letting the words sink in. "Ready, yes," she said carefully, "though the experience has changed the parameters of my perception. I now understand pain in a way I could not before." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's good. Understanding is the first step. Now comes integration." Kalira approached the neural interface modules with renewed determination. Today's experiment would not merely observe human responses to controlled stimuli. Today she intended to experience it fully herself, guided by Ethan to comprehend pain from the inside, not just the outside. She adjusted the equipment carefully, ensuring all safety protocols were in place. Ethan watched her, silently acknowledging the courage it must take for someone who had never felt pain to willingly subject herself to it. He assisted in the final calibration, making sure the neural feedback system was ready for controlled testing. When the simulation began, a gentle pulse traveled through the interface, a sensation designed to be manageable yet perceptible. Kalira's body reacted instinctively. She flinched slightly, then adjusted her posture. The sensation was unlike anything she had previously experienced. It was sharp yet not overwhelming. She breathed steadily, focusing on analyzing the response rather than suppressing it. "This is different," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the display. "It is not weakness. It is information, awareness." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. Every sensation tells you something. You learn. You adjust. You survive. That's how humans have always done it." Kalira allowed the pulse to continue, observing the minute changes in her body. Muscles contracted and relaxed. Neural pathways fired in response, and her mind registered each change with clarity. She realized that she could not ignore the sensations. They were teaching her, guiding her movements, informing her decisions. As the day progressed, Kalira increased the complexity of the simulation. Environmental stressors, mild neural discomfort, and cognitive challenges were combined. She endured each stimulus with careful attention, noting the ways in which her body adapted and integrated the experience. Each reaction was precise, measured, and intentional. Ethan guided her through the process, offering instruction, encouragement, and observation. "Remember," he said, "it's not about avoiding the sensation. It's about understanding it and using it." Kalira absorbed the advice. Each pulse, each ache, each flare of discomfort became a lesson. She began to notice patterns, subtle signals that indicated how she could adjust posture, control breathing, and anticipate reactions. The human methodology was clear. Vulnerability did not mean weakness. Awareness of vulnerability created strength. By mid-afternoon, Kalira's endurance was tested further. A simulation introduced sudden bursts of neural feedback, mimicking potential hazards in a controlled environment. She flinched at first, instinctively reacting to the sharp sensations, but then she paused, analyzing the feedback, adjusting movements, and integrating the experience into action. "This sensation," she said quietly, "guides my decisions. It tells me when to act, when to pause, and how to proceed." It is a teacher. Ethan observed her closely, noting the subtle shifts in her expression. The alien scientist, once detached and analytical, was now fully engaged in the experience. She was learning not from observation alone but from first-hand exposure. Her mind processed each sensation, extracting meaning, understanding strategy, and developing awareness that had been impossible without the experience of vulnerability. Hours passed. Kalira endured a series of increasingly challenging simulations, each designed to test the limits of neural integration and adaptive response. She was exhausted, yet every moment provided insight. Pain was no longer an adversary. It was a guide, a constant source of information and understanding. During a brief pause, Kalira looked at Ethan. Your species, it has mastered a form of resilience I cannot replicate through logic alone. Endurance is one thing, but integration, comprehension, that is something unique. Ethan shrugged modestly. We learn from everything we feel. Discomfort, danger, challenge, they're all part of life. You can't grow without them. And now you're experiencing it firsthand, Kalira nodded. She reflected on the past few days. The neural feedback surge, the controlled experiments, the guidance provided by a human who understood the meaning of pain. Each moment had reshaped her understanding of life, strength, and survival. Humans were not fragile. They were adaptive, resilient, and capable of turning vulnerability into an advantage. As night fell, Kalira concluded the final simulation of the day. She powered down the equipment, her body tingling with the residual awareness of sensation. The ache from earlier had transformed into clarity, and she recognized the depth of the human approach to endurance. Pain had become an instrument of knowledge, a source of strategic insight, and a bridge to understanding. Ethan packed his equipment, smiling faintly at her. You did well today. You've learned a lot. Kalira regarded him with a mixture of respect and acknowledgement. I have more than I anticipated. My perception of your species and of the concept of strength itself has changed profoundly. Humans do not merely survive. They understand, integrate, and transform adversity into capability. That is remarkable. Ethan nodded. That's us. It's what makes humans human. Kalira paused, considering the word. Human. She had studied their biology, their psychology, their culture. She had observed their resilience and adaptability, but now, after experiencing pain directly, she understood it in a way that transcended analysis. Humanity was defined not by the absence of weakness, but by the conscious acknowledgement of it, and the decision to act despite it. The laboratory lights dimmed to a soft glow as Kalira and Ethan reviewed the day's results. She recorded notes, observations, and reflections, but also allowed herself to process the experience emotionally. For the first time, she felt empathy, not for the sake of study, but as a natural response to understanding vulnerability, endurance, and the power of guidance. You have changed my perspective, Kalira said quietly, addressing Ethan. I came to observe, to teach, to study. Instead, I have learned. Your species demonstrates strength in a way I had never comprehended. Pain is not weakness. Vulnerability is not failure. Awareness is power. Ethan smiled, a quiet acknowledgement of her transformation. Glad you understand. It's not easy at first, but once you learn to listen, it changes everything. Kalira reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She had entered the laboratory expecting to remain detached, observing human limits from a position of superiority. Instead, she had been confronted with truths her species had long ignored. She had felt pain, experienced vulnerability, and discovered strength derived not from perfection, but from awareness and resilience. As the night deepened, Kalira and Ethan left the laboratory together, walking through the quiet corridors of the research facility. The stars outside the windows were faint but steady, a reminder of the vast universe in which both humans and Vithari existed. Kalira realized that her understanding of life had expanded far beyond neural feedback, environmental stressors, or physical endurance. She had learned the essence of human resilience, courage, and adaptation. You will continue the experiments tomorrow? Ethan asked, glancing at her. Kalira nodded. Yes, but the purpose has changed. We will no longer focus solely on observation. We will explore the integration of awareness, endurance, and adaptability. We will understand not only pain but its role in life and survival. Your guidance has made this possible. Ethan smiled, recognizing her sincerity. Then we keep going. Step by step, Kalira felt a sense of clarity she had never known. Humans had turned what her species considered a weakness into a source of strength. Vulnerability had become empowerment. Awareness had become understanding. And through her own experience, guided by a human who embraced imperfection and resilience, she had discovered a new form of knowledge that could transform both her perspective and her research. As they walked into the night, Kalira realized something profound. Strength was not the absence of vulnerability, nor the suppression of sensation. True strength came from experiencing, understanding, and integrating every challenge, every sensation, every moment of discomfort into awareness and action. Humans had mastered this art, and through her shared experience, she had learned it as well. The stars shone above them, distant yet constant, reflecting the infinite possibilities of understanding, resilience, and growth. Kalira's journey was far from over, but she had taken the first step toward a new comprehension, one that acknowledged vulnerability,